Welcome back, people that have saw the other two chapters so far, and hello to anybody that's starting new with the channel. I'm going to pretty much get into this one this time, but I do want to first ask you a question. Name one go-to song that changes your mood from sad to happy. It doesn't necessarily have to be Ren, but any other musician or whatever. What's a go-to song that really changes your mood in a good way? Let us know in the comments, okay? Um, and then the last thing I'll say is with this type of reaction, we do things a little bit differently. I will pause several times throughout to give my thoughts of what I'm hearing Ren say. I haven't watched it yet. This is unscripted, off the dome, real and authentic. Okay. The main focus is to support Ren because he's done so much for us in so many ways that some of us can't even imagine. So we are supporting Ren on this channel. And I'm thank you for being part of the journey. So let's get right into it. This is chapter 3 on his other channel, Ren Makes Stuff. Here we go.
My therapist was scowling at my weekly anxiety and depression scores like a detective trying to crack a particularly stubborn case. There were no signs of improvement, and the scores followed no real measurable pattern that were consistent with bipolar. After nearly 2 years of talk therapy and taking enough medications to fill a pharmacy, he sat down with me and he dropped the bombshell that he didn't think that I had bipolar. In fact, he said that he didn't think that I had depression at all. And it was a very odd thing to be stripped of an identity in an instant. The reality was that a 20-minute in and out consultation 2 years ago led to 2 years of swallowing pills that I never needed and devoting so much of my time to managing the condition that I never actually had. The emotions inside me swirled around like a mismatched soup. On one hand, I was full of anger and I was bitter about the whole situation, but I was also hopeful that this new path could offer me the relief that I desperately needed. He told me he was going to refer me to an ME clinic in Bath. I'd never heard of it before, but instinctively true to character, I started researching it online as soon as I got home. Apparently, ME is the medical equivalent of a choose-your-own-adventure book, with tiredness as the only consistent plotline. There were no universally accepted reasons as to why the fuck it existed in the first place. It seemed it was largely accepted.
I'll stop it right there for a moment. So it's always scary when you see something or hear something that says unknown. Like for me personally, because you want resolve, you want an answer, you want things like matter of fact right now. And for me, it almost makes me feel sometimes like I'm like a experimental hamster or something like that. So cause and risk factors, exact cause and mechanism is unknown. Um, and then what he said a moment ago, I mean, after having this identity, like this is my norm at the time of being labeled depression and things of that nature, to then be told from some new doctor, it doesn't seem like you have depression at all. And like he said, it feels kind of weird to be stripped of your identity, but that's a shame when that's your identity. But I understand it. Like you start to, becomes your normal routine to take medication and do this and do that and adjust your whole life to then be told differently. But it's scary also as well because, we rely on doctors and stuff like that. We trust doctors. And I can't imagine how it is if you realize that you got a false diagnosis and then you now have to trust a different doctor. That just talking it out loud is just a scary thought. So, I mean, knowing Ren actually has been through that is really, really scary. Let us know in the comments if you've had any situation like that where you were given a false diagnosis from a doctor and you went to a second one. Because it then makes you wonder, should I trust the second one? Like, it's just crazy. All right, so let's get back into this.
Accepted to be a post-viral condition, but that was all speculative because there were no clear consensus in the medical community what ME even was. The defining characteristic was a tiredness that wouldn't go away with rest. I could relate to this. In fact, I could more than relate to it. For anyone lucky enough to not have experienced this, if you want an idea of what it's like, force yourself to stay awake for 3 nights in a row. During this time, eat the food that makes you feel terrible, and in this sleep-deprived state, exercise until your muscles give out. By the 3rd day, you'll have a small insight into living with this condition. During the years post-stem cell transplant, where I recovered a lot of my health and functionality, I remember getting COVID and thinking it was a walk in the park compared to the first year of my illness. The difference was COVID lasted about a week. The thick of my illness lasted 8 years.
Let's resonate on that. Wow. Let's just resonate on that for a minute. Like the thick and everything of his illness lasted 8 years. I mean, wow. It's another reason why this channel really loves to support Ren and everything that he does, because so many people, sadly enough, would have given up after 1 year, after 2 years, after 3 years. You know what I mean? But 8 years at his young age, because, you know, like you think people often think that someone older, let's say me in my 50s, you know, we're real seasoned in life. We've been through more hardship. So you would think that we can tough it out more than someone in their 20s. That's not the case. Not everything's labeled with age. It's just labeled on, in this case, your determination. Like, thank goodness Ren mentally did not want to give up. He wanted to push through. He wanted to see if there was some type of resolve, some type of proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm so glad that he did, because he's with us. But still, 8 years. And the fact that he compared that to having COVID, and that's like a walk in the park, gives you some sense on the devastation and the toll of his regular illness that he was living with. So like he said, COVID lasted a week when he had it. His situation overall was 8 years. And still on and off and stuff like that, but a lot better now than it was back then. So saddening, but I'm so glad again that he's sharing this. He's giving us hope. He gives us determination. Like, you know, there's times now like something bad can happen in my life, but it might be something trivial. And I'll immediately disregard that because I'm like, listen, Ren's been through a lot more stuff than my little problem. So that helps me though to get over it. So he helps in so many different levels, big or small. And I'm glad that he puts his heart on his sleeve. And I know it's not easy for him, but at the same time, it cleanses him to get it off his chest. And then at the same time, it educates us. So I love everything about him. So let's get back to it, okay?
And it only was getting worse. I pinned a lot of hope on going to that first visit at the ME clinic. It was a 6-month waiting list, God bless NHS wait times, but I felt excited to be surrounded by people who would understand me, where I could climb out of this nightmare, but my hopes were pretty quickly crushed during that first visit. I remember walking into a space that looked like a disused classroom where a bunch of people on chairs were sitting around in circles like Alcoholics Anonymous. I could feel a sense of camaraderie and that we all felt like dog shit. We were all confused and we were all desperately wanting to feel better. I believe at the time I was probably the youngest in the group. The group leader waddled in and handed us all a booklet that looked like a school timetable. She then sat us down and told about this new revolutionary technique called pacing, where you write down and track everything that you do in a day, and then you do it less. And then with time, do it more again. The theory being that you have a limited bucket of energy compared to normal people, and you need to protect that and gradually push it. I thought this sounded pretty stupid, so I raised my hand. I told her about the pain in my body. I told her that my muscles twitched constantly. I told her that my bones ached. I told her that my mouth was dry. I couldn't focus. That some days they'd be without mercy and I'd be trapped in bed for the whole day. But the days that I wasn't, I wanted to make the most of it. I wanted to breathe the air and I wanted to live. She told me she understood it's hard, but she didn't really offer more than that. She just pointed at the booklet and told me to follow it. I asked her about things like heavy metal poisoning, about chronically reactivating viruses, about defective mitochondria, about all the things that I read that were linked to chronic fatigue, but she just raised an eyebrow, looked at me like I was a hypochondriac and told me she knew nothing about those things. I remember walking out of the building feeling disheartened and defeated, so much so that my legs buckled as I was walking home. I began to sob uncontrollably on the side of the road. An old woman knelt down to comfort me and asked me what was wrong. I didn't even really know how to explain, so I just told her that I missed my friend. Despite my skepticism, I stuck to the program for at least half a year, and I kept going for my periodic visits to the clinic, and it did jack shit. In fact, I got worse. I was always getting worse. One thing that particularly struck me about the ME support groups was the pure desperation and confusion. With most other conditions, you're given a diagnosis, a prognosis of whether it's going to kill you, and what you can do to manage it or cure it. With ME, you don't get that. You get an indeterminately long sentence to purgatory. You feel worse than you've ever felt in your whole life, and you're given no explanation as to why, and no signpost pointing the way out.
I just sent a chill up my back, just what he just said. And like, I have like a vivid imagination, and like, you know, I can see myself in a situation like when someone's describing something perfectly, and he's describing stuff in such detail and stuff so perfectly that it feels like I'm there with him. It's intentionally because I want to try as best as I can to be empathetic with him, even though can't be true empathy because I haven't gone through what he's gone through, but I can see myself sitting there with him. So hearing what he just said, like, you know, normally you're somewhere and you get like a diagnosis and you get like, okay, are you going to live or die, and what steps you need to do and stuff like this. But to be in this situation, ME, as he's talking about, and there's like this state of confusion, and it's almost like they're guessing as they go along, and it's just like this purgatory, as he mentioned. Like, that is almost unimaginable to have to go through that. This state of confusion that you're going in. You're like looking at others to help you, to guide you, to give you some good news or some steps that you need to take. And like, they're basically like, I don't know. You know what I mean? So it's like, how do you, as the person with the condition, get through? It's literally like a daily struggle. Even more minimizing that, it's more a minute to minute, hour to hour struggle. And again, it's almost hard to imagine how he got through this, him and others in his same situation. But again, I'm glad that he did get through it. But even if he, you know, that could still take a toll on a person's mental state. That might always linger with him, some aspects and stuff like that. So it's like a double-edged sword. Like, I know a lot of what he does now and stuff in life has been molded from the good and bad that has happened to him. But then at the same time, some of that bad stuff can still be lingering and things like that. And that's just sad. It's just really sad when you can't have like a roadmap of bad times and travesties in your life. It's just like you're aimlessly, or you have no direction, no proper direction. So it's hard to hear this, but I know it's more hard for him to read what he wrote down, and he's reliving it. He has to be reliving it as he's saying it, but I'm so glad that he's cleansing himself and he's sharing stuff with us again, because we can learn and heal from this. So let's get back to this, okay? Let us know how you feel in the comments.
There was no selection bias to the people suffering. Members of the group were anything from esteemed ex-lawyers to single parents to former athletes. One thing I can say, these people were for the most part all extremely driven and collectively mourning their old lives. There's a stigma that because ME's predominant presentation of symptoms is tiredness, that its victims are just being lazy. I can tell you firsthand that me and every single person I've met with genuine ME would rather run 1,000 marathons than have to live another week with the tiredness and the unrelenting fatigue. We were at war with our tiredness, trying desperately to escape it, and some of us would go to extreme lengths to turn ourselves into guinea pigs to try and find ways out. Suicide was pretty common in those online support groups. It was around this time I was swallowed into the music industry. I was out busking on the streets one day and I noticed this sketchy, good-looking Mauritian guy with his arms crossed watching me really intensely, as though he was studying every lyric coming out of my mouth. He approached me and asked me if the songs I was singing were mine. I said they were. A big smile was painted across his face, and he told me he just finished recording Plan B's latest record, which turned out to be The Defamation of Strickland Banks, one of my favourite albums of all time. He was looking for a new project to sink his teeth into, and he asked me if I'd come to London to record. We got into it. The whole time I felt dreadful, but this was a lifelong dream materialising in front of my eyes. So bit by bit, when I could, I'd get the train to London and start chipping away at my first ever album. I didn't really let on how I was feeling during this time because I didn't want to sabotage it. There would be times I'd finish up in the vocal booth after doing the take, excuse myself to go to the toilet, throw up from the dizziness I was experiencing, sometimes with specks of blood, and then I'd go back and pretend that nothing had happened. I'd be sitting around with the whole room spinning and would pretend I was fine. There was only so long that I was able to keep this up. Eric told me it'd be a cool idea for me to start going.
It sounds gut wrenching to me. Like saddening is like hearing his story as he turns the page. Every time he turns the page, it sounds like louder than life. It's like it's that moment of stillness where I'm imagining that as he's turning the page, he's saying to himself, here we go, another page I have to relive and stuff like that. And I feel his pain. I feel his struggles. I feel the terrible journey that he has been going through. And I'm here for him. We're here to support him. You're here to support him. But let me know in the comments, does anybody else feel that? Like when you're really intuitive and really into what somebody is saying and you're listening to them and you're going through the feelings and emotions with them as he's turning each page, it sounds like so loud. I mean, I know the microphone's there, but do you know what I mean? It's like I imagine him thinking of, oh God, here comes another page of my life that I'm going to have to relive. So I just wanted to put that out there. But bravo to him for helping us out and helping himself out. So let's get back to this.
Into industry showcases and start building buzz. Performing live like this was a whole new level of taxing that I wasn't ready for, but I was so ferociously ambitious that I just plowed through.
Oh, and then let me mention also, like, I mean, what he was just describing about, he's basically has to put on this facade. I mean, it's so saddening. Like he said, he has to go to the bathroom. He's dizzy. He's throwing up. He feels like horrendous. And then he goes back and puts on a brave facade because he doesn't want to burden anybody else or ruin the day, or as it were. And I know, and I've heard that other musicians, through the course of time have had like problems and ailments and things that they always put on a facade because it's like you always want to show a good face for the people you're working with, for the fans and stuff like that. But I can imagine it's got to be hard. The difference with Ren here is like, he doesn't put on a facade for his fans. Like we all know what he's gone through. But the thing is that he rises above it. He doesn't let it bring him down. He still does music because music has gotten him through this. But just knowing what he was saying there, like, when somebody says, oh, I'll be back, I'm going to the bathroom, nobody's going to think, oh, they must be sick and they're going to like do whatever in the bathroom, and then they come back smiling, you think everything's okay. So it makes me almost wonder, the next time I'm hanging out with somebody, when they go to the bathroom, are they letting their facade, like taking that mask off, and their true selves are in there? Because some people don't want to burden people with problems, and that's just their genuine niceness or nature and stuff like that. But depending on who it is, I wish people would tell me, like, if it's a good friend or a family member that I love, you don't have to hide anything from me per se, but I'm just saying that out loud as far as, it depends on the situation. At a recording studio, if you're doing things like that, they might not necessarily be like besties, but sometimes you have to just hide things just to get through the day. So I'm living this through with him vicariously, unfortunately, but it gives me a better understanding of appreciating people who have problems and are doing their best to get through it, so let's get back into this. I hope I'm making sense. Like, this is off the dome, unrehearsed, unscripted, but these are my thoughts. So tell us your thoughts as well in the comments, because we really like hearing from you. Thank you. Here we go.
The usual way it would go is I'd be in the back of Charlie's car, the whole world would be spinning, I'd be trying my best to sleep in it all day, parked up outside whatever venue or pub it was in London, trying to conserve energy for the show. Sometimes I'd cry a little before I performed, my whole body would be burning, then I'd brush it off and I'd get on stage and I'd perform as best I could. People would come up to me at the end, pat me on the back, I'd smile and pretend to be charismatic. Then I'd get back in the car and I wish I was in bed and have to endure a 3-hour drive back to Bath from London. There was only a few shows where I could keep pretending. I'd usually be trying to disguise the fact that my body was trembling through the fatigue and pain. Eventually I started crying mid-set. It became blindingly obvious to everyone working with me during that time that something was very wrong. I told Eric that I needed to take some time out. My plan was to live at home with my mum for a month maximum, get my energy back, and come and finish the record. That 1 month turned into 2 months, turned into 3 months, turned into 6 months. I pushed myself to total burnout. The distance led to me and that angel breaking up, in part because it was difficult to navigate a relationship when you have so much brain fog, and I didn't know what it was well enough to be able to explain it to her at the time. With a loud thud, I'd been jolted out of a Shakespearean storyline, I lost a record deal, and I couldn't get out of bed. My friends from Trick the Fox never really called to check up on me. It felt like the whole world was moving at lightning speed without me. I had this amazing opportunity right in front of me, and I was chained to the floor. I was alone, I was sick. I wished that my condition would get it over with and kill me, but it wouldn't, and it felt cruel that it wouldn't. It just let me rot in bed. The whole world would continue to turn, and I would rot. In the next episode, I'm going to tell you about a fight with a television and losing my anal virginity to an 80-year-old man. Stay tuned.
What? Wait a minute. I think, okay. I think I'm sure I know what he's talking about. Like a proctologist. But it threw me for a minute there. But what he said right before that doozy of a sentence, wishing that it would end, felt like I was just sitting there rotting, like just such raw and visceral but truthful statements. And again, since I'm able to imagine and feel like I'm almost there, and have his mindset, it's just sometimes it's hard to put into words. Like, we all have types of bad days and bad weeks and bad months, and we all have our own personal hells and stuff that we go through. Don't discredit that though, because like I heard somebody say once, like, oh, because so and so has worse problems than me, I'll no longer will complain or anything. Like, that doesn't mean that your problems aren't bad. Yes, somebody else's problems might be worse, but if your problems are for you personally, bringing you down or bad for you in some type of way, don't discredit that. I mean, you matter too. I had to put that out there because this is like a sense of healing. This is a sense of healing for all of us. And it teaches us, when we can have some common area like this forum or whatever you want to call it, to congregate and to listen and to compare notes and to learn from things and stuff, and then from teaching others perhaps, it can help us in our own personal lives. Like I said a moment ago, like I had some problem, but it was a minuscule problem. And before listening to Ren, I would have made a big deal about it. But knowing his struggles, some things I'll just say, oh, that's not bad, or I can handle that like this, or, it gives me a better sense of taking a moment, having that moment of stillness, assessing the situation and seeing if I can handle it and get it taken care of right away, right now, or, handle it some other different way. So these are all learning lessons. And what better way to learn than from somebody that's actually been through this? You know what I mean? Like, rather than like reading some scientific book about this, and that, hearing from someone like Ren who's actually been going through this, telling us, that's the best teacher. That's the best educator, in my opinion. So yeah, living this journey with him, it's bittersweet. It's a bittersweet or beautiful melancholy, take it for what it's worth. Yeah, so let's get back into this, see what's left. Tell us your thoughts.
My thought patterns are composed by a time bomb for an author,
like pigs to the slaughter. A symphony of self-doubt sings out, breath starts getting shorter, running water. It's the state that I wish to become. Instead, concrete envelops my movement and I'm rendered deaf and dumb, unable to heed the advice of others. Don't tell me things will get better, cause so far things haven't gotten better. I've got the sweater, poster child, bipolar, ADHD, therapist, wet dream. I don't wanna talk about my father, I don't wanna talk about my dead friend, I don't wanna talk about myself. I'm sick of talking about myself. I'm sick of talking about myself and realizing that talking about myself never ever helps. Still, I call for help, cause I really want help. But the pills didn't seem to help, and the therapist didn't seem to help. But still, I want help. I've danced with the devil in hell, I've sat in a prisonless cell, and here I always dwell, in this prison in myself. I do this thing where my mind travels back to the golden age. You know those times where you were carefree and everything was golden? The golden age. You know those times where everything was golden, where you were carefree and everything was golden? The hardest thing I ever had to do was come to terms with the fact that that time never really existed. I've always felt so fucking detached and broken, bruised and mismatched. Find it hard to relax, living under the cracks. Tried to fill in the gaps, lying here on my back. Still, I can't find it. Sense of peace in my mind declined it. Pulse increase and my sweat combines with a feeling so deep I fall inside it. Depression, I hate you, depression. Your constant oppression, respond with aggression. They say depression brings you lessons. Constant stressing conceals blessings. You will grow in broken settings. Fuck those lessons, fuck depression. I've been living in your shadow for so long that I forgot how I can shine, how I can find a refuge in my mind. How am I meant to sit here and unwind? The planets align. I feel like I'm cursed, feel like I'm cursed to just be here to hurt. Feel like I'm cursed to just be here to bleed, but my demons been feeling this way since birth. Depression, I hate you. 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 Depression, I hate
you. Well, that got to me. I never heard that one before. I know I haven't heard all of Ren's songs yet. We've done a lot. Like we have, I think, a playlist of his of like maybe 60. I think last time I looked, but I haven't heard this one before. And this is very visceral, very matter of fact, and he pretty much encapsulated it all. And I like that he came right out and said it. I hate you, depression. Fuck depression. I hate you, depression. Like, who would like depression, right? So I like that he's saying it. He's coming out and saying it. There's some people out in the world who won't admit they have depression. There's some people in the world who will admit that they have it, but they won't really get off their chest. So let me say this, because I've been talking a lot throughout the whole thing. Like, I'm not a medical person. I do not have a medical license. So anything that I say or suggest or talk about is just my own unprofessional thoughts. But, I've had moments in my life where I had moments of depression. So I can speak with some type of confidence about certain things. Now, I do know that depression can come in different levels, different volumes. It could be momentarily. Somebody could be depressed for like a month, maybe. Some people, it's like this ever following chain that's around you that follows you everywhere you go. And that's just so saddening to me that someone has it all the time on a daily. Um, and it's a scary thing because what he was saying in the lyrics, like, it's like you don't want to hear certain things, but then it's like you do want help. Like you want help, but like he said, I don't want to hear you talk about my dead friend. I don't want to hear you saying everything will get better. I don't want you to hear this and I don't want to hear that. But I do want to hear something, and since many of us who are untrained, let's say, or anything like that, I know we say things out of caring and stuff like that, but then I understand how sometimes saying certain things might not make us feel better. You know what I mean? Like, I personally try not to say things like things will get better, because that sounds like you have some psychic abilities and you know that. I say things that are like, try not to give up, keep looking for hope, because those things are just comforting and wishing someone well, but those aren't things that sound like you have some psychic powers. Do you know what I mean? Because that triggers me when people say things that sound like they know the answer, like what he said there. Things will get better. That's some psychic ability answer. Like, how do you know things will get better? You know, it's hard to put into words sometimes, but this is me being real and unscripted. So the song resonated so well because he was saying things that are very, very true. Some things you don't want to hear, but he's still letting you know, oh, I still want help. Yeah, so it's almost like walking a tightrope when it comes to understanding people that have problems in their lives and then trying to offer comfort, but then you don't want to either step on their toes, or you try not to say the wrong thing, but it's really hard. And like I said, we don't have like a roadmap. We're not professionals. So I understand how some people don't know what to say or what to do. But at the same time, you want to try to appreciate that they even ask the questions, or offer some type of comfort. Because there's some people don't offer any comfort at all. Like, I think Ren said earlier in this piece that when he started to get sick, he didn't hear anything from like Trick the Fox. He didn't hear anything from them, you know? And you never know. If somebody doesn't say anything because they're scared and don't know what to say, or the fact that they just don't care. It could be one or the other. But either way, you didn't hear from anybody. So that's really disturbing. Um, but yeah, it's the only thing I can say. It's like walking a tightrope. Because there's some things that I don't want to hear. Like for instance, when I've had loved ones that have passed away, and I come from the funeral, it triggers me when people say, "Oh, how do you feel?" And I try not to say, "Well, how do you think I feel?" I just came from a funeral, someone that I love. So, but I know that they may not say it to try to be harsh or bitter, but it's just like, I wish that sometimes people would think of a different way to word something. Like what I say to people if they come from a funeral is, I say, listen, if you need anything, please contact me and let me know. I am here for you. Don't feel that you're bothering me. Those are things that you can say that are just immediately offering your services. I make sure I don't say things like, so how are you feeling? How did today go? Like things like that. Cause to me, it's like obvious. Like, nobody's going to say, oh, it went well. The funeral was great. So that's just an example. Um, but yeah, it's crazy sometimes. You don't know what to say, what to do. Um, all I can say is this: as long as you reach out in some way and let somebody know that you're there as a support system, because that's the main thing. Like, imagine going through all of what Ren has gone through with nobody's help, not even verbally saying, I'm here for you, that proverbial shoulder to lean on. Um, I can't even imagine. Um, but I'm just glad that he's here. And I'm glad that other people besides Ren are here, like whoever's going through some trials and tribulations in their life, whatever you did to get through it to the other side and to keep pushing through, if it's still ongoing, give yourself a round of applause. Okay. Because that deserves some recognition. Okay. And keep fighting the good fight is the only other thing I can say. Okay. Um, yeah. So there's no ask or pass on this or anything like that. This is, again, to support Ren, to share our thoughts, our feelings, our concern, our love, our compassion, our appreciation. So yeah, thank you for helping me. Thanks for being a part of this reaction mini series. This is chapter 3 that we just saw and heard, and then that wonderful heartwarming song at the end that I didn't hear before. So, all right, I want y'all to take it easy and keep it breezy.